Hey,
All right. Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Christy. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am excited to have some time with you today and wanted to just kind of hear from you. First of all, I thought I would check in just to see kind of how you're doing today. We had last week was a lot and and it seems like it's a minute by minute a lot. So how are you
It
just
sure is. What did we talk about last week that was a lot? Yeah.
right,
That's how
right.
it feels.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you just how are you feeling? How are you coming into the session?
Pretty good. I feel I had a couple of days in our Glendale office, and so came home last night, two 12-hour days back to back. And so got a good night's sleep and I'm feeling pretty good. But I will apologize in advance if there's any background noise because my kids and my grandkids are here for a wedding. And then they have some friends visiting and there's just chaos outside my door. So, a 2-year-old could walk in at any minute.
Oh, I'd love to see a 2-year-old. That's a good distraction. And that
Yep.
may also
Yeah,
be helping remind you that there's a bigger world other than First
for
America.
sure. There indeed is. Yeah.
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 It is a day-to-day kind of like, well, what are today's challenges? Like, Tuesday's challenges were this, but Wednesday's challenges were that. Tomorrow's will be something else, right? So,
Yeah. 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 Well, there were some things you were going to do last week and wanted to check in about that. Some things you're going to think about, but what's most important to you today to talk about?
we talked about that whole vision discussion. And I think, when I was talking to you last week, I had just met with that really influential escrow officer, and he had given me some great feedback. And I have to kind of figure out some of the timing on that in light of this new consultant that we're going to be working with, um, and the feedback they're going to be soliciting. So, yes, I feel like I had, boots on the ground kind of confirmation that having a vision discussion with our leaders, not just our management team, but with our branch managers, is important and necessary.
Mhm.
And also, um, they're all going to be contacted by this consultant and have a 30 to 60-minute interview with them to get feedback. And so they're going to give all that feedback. And then in March, I'm going to get the feedback. And then at the end of March, middle of March, we're going to do a 2-day retreat where a management team, not including these branch managers, is going to co-create a vision and how we move forward as a company. So I'm
Mm.
sort of like, do I bring all these people into the office the end of February and say, come on in, let's talk, and I want to give you my vision. And then we do this whole thing and the management team comes together and it's something different.
Mm.
Like, right? It's hard. It's hard. It's like, I, it's timely, like it's time sensitive. I think they need to hear it. And also, I don't want to say, well, this was the message I gave you in February, but now it's April and I want to give you a different message.
Mhm.
Right. So I'm kind of in a quandary about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you want to
How do
expand?
I
Do
how
you
do
want
I
to?
fill the gap in
Yeah.
between? Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt.
So, oh no, no, no. So if we were to kind of unpack that today, what would success look like at the end?
I think feeling kind of confident in a decision maybe to punt it because I think that's probably what I need to do. But
Hmm.
then figuring out, well, how do I then bridge the gap for the next couple of months
Okay.
until I can have some messaging out, right? Um, and maybe punting it isn't the right thing. Maybe saying this is what we're working on, but I wanted you to know where we are now. I don't really know. I mean, when you get people, you're asking people to drive from Palm Desert and
Yeah.
San Diego up to Glendale. You got to make it worth their while.
Yeah. 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 That's good. Okay. So what I hear you saying is there's this the our original kind of conversation about these 4 sessions were to be to think about a vision, kind of craft something that you felt confident in and confident in sharing. In the meantime, you're seeing that there is also a consulting situation happening that's also going to do the same thing, but you feel there are people who want to hear something, like
Yeah.
you can't say nothing.
Yep.
So for our focus today, really kind of leaning in on what, if we're not saying everything, what do we need to say and how? Would that be successful?
Yeah,
Figure that
I
out?
think so. I think so. And then if we have time, I'll talk to you about a challenge I'm having with a person.
Oh, okay. Well,
We'll see if we
we
have
can
time.
also talk
We'll see if
about
we have
that.
time.
Which one's most important? This is your time.
They're both important. Let's go down the road of how I bridge that gap with the branch managers, because I think it's important. And if we have time, we'll talk about the other, but it's
Okay.
not. Yeah.
Okay. We'll work on that. So, okay. Can I ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
You mentioned, I think it's the right thing to punt, and then you said the opposite, or maybe it's not. So tell me more about, why that was the first thing that came out of your mouth.
I think because I don't want to create a credibility issue that she said this and now she's saying this,
Okay.
right?
Right. Yeah. And, okay, tell me a little bit more about the credibility, like meaning you would, okay, so you're saying you'd proclaim one thing and then later it sounds like
Yeah.
it's something different. Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of like the expectations are so unreasonably high, right? I cannot even remotely meet some of these people's expectations. Not all of them, but some of them, right? So to half-ass it, to use, sorry for the term, but to half-ass it and say, well, I called y'all up here because, this guy told me you needed to hear from me, but we're still in the process of figuring out how we're moving forward. But I'm going to tell you where we're at now, but that might change, right? I don't want to set myself up to even more damage the credibility that we have as a leadership team, but just even as me and myself, because they can be like brutally critical.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes complete sense. So what have you thought about as far as or have you thought about something that's an in between, like either something not in person, either something one-to-one, or even just a communication about, hey, here's what the management team is doing with this consultant. And, will they be getting feedback from these people as well, or no?
They're just giving input. And so I didn't want the room to include any of these branch managers when we do this retreat or our ongoing meetings as a management team. So they can't be part of the process, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I guess, you said something that kind of hits the nail on the head. Part of it is, they're going to give input. I do need to follow up with them as to what we're doing with that input, right? And so I suppose I could say, we're going to schedule something in April or whatever. And in doing so, we'll share with you what the management team is working on. And then I could probably, just schedule some one-on-ones with people, right? That might be the way to fill the gap in a different way, is to just go meet with people one-on-one. I've already met with a couple of them. So if I just did, there's 11. If I just did the 8 or 9 more, right?
Yeah.
So that could work.
I think I hear you saying Well, I am going to just jump into consulting. I mean, if they're for just a second, I'll put my good, and then we'll go, we'll be able to move to the other. If they're giving input, I mean, I think that is an opportunity for you to begin setting up a vision that how you already said you want to be at a place that people want to work and to
Yep.
hire the best people. So that involves soliciting feedback, having people involved in the conversation. Again, I know they're not in the conversation, but they're giving input. So if they are understanding, and is this new? Have they ever been invited to be part of something like this?
Not
Okay.
that I'm aware of, not since I've been there in 6 years.
I think that is the entry point that gives you the ability to be a leader and have it in a, like, honestly, it's probably better than something that seems like out of the blue. We're all going to get together and Carrie just says something.
Yeah, you're right.
It's more like I am intentional. We're bringing somebody in from the outside. It's very important that you take this seriously and bring your input. And then on the, but it's a process of discernment involving people. And then, we're going to also, this is all going to be revealed to you all at the end of the process, but this is your chance for your voice to be heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was very consulting.
Yeah. Yep. I think that makes total sense. I mean, it was interesting. I got an email from someone yesterday who said, thank you for this. And she put the word feels in quotes. She goes, it feels very considerate of you to do this. Which I thought it was an interesting way of wording it, but I was like, oh, she's being considered where she hasn't been considered before.
Absolutely. I mean,
she's been with the company like 27 years.
I think this could be, and it's so different, right, than the very top down, like what is his name? Ross says, is his name Ross? No. Who was the original guy that founded it? Russ. No, not Russ. Person. I just lost his name.
Russell. So Russell is my number
not Russell.
two.
It's the other
Scott
guy.
is the guy who founded it. Scott.
Who? Scott. Sorry. So see what I did? I put an O in Russ and his name is Scott. I'm terrible at remembering names, but I had the vowel right.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Scott. Yes. I mean, from the top down, whatever Scott says, we worship him. He's amazing. And this is a new day of leadership where we're inviting participation, and you've got a tough enough skin that you're willing to hear people's feedback.
Well, that's a whole other story. That's going to be so brutal. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm not looking forward to it, but it's necessary.
But hopefully it'll be not just if this is done right, it should be not just about how you're doing, but how we're doing and where we're going, because I mean, there's no need in just talking about how Carrie's doing. I mean, that's a little,
please don't.
Small piece of the puzzle. So how does that, sorry, I just jumped right into consulting, but how does that do it that way?
I think that's good. I think that makes sense, because it really would just be a waste of their time and mine to try to cast a vision, which I know in my head, but there's no legs to it yet, right? But they do need to know what we're going to do with their input. They do.
And then that one-to-one, I love you thinking about doing that. I think that's super smart.
Yeah.
One-to-one. That's never been a bad thing to do. People feel you took time for just them. They will probably feel more like that than if they are called to a big meeting and they're like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
All right, great. We solved that.
Good.
All right.
Well, that was easy.
So that was more consulting. That was a little bit of coaching, but let's, okay. So that being sort of I think this is a good place, because we have one more coaching session next week. So let's just, in general, I think it's fine to shift towards what will help you navigate while you're figuring this out to get to the consultant, to get to the vision, because you still got to live the life. So does that sound like the best use of our time?
Okay. Sounds great.
So Okay, what else would you like to talk about today?
So Russell, who's my number two, um, he he was our finance, like a CFO, but SVP of finance. And so he spent his world in finance, and now he's learning to be an operator. And so he's the guy who just wants to get stuff done. And so he just shoots from the hip a lot. And doing that is starting just recently to cause real problems. So we have, 95% of our business is escrow operations, and that's what I ran in the company before my position. And so there's me, and then there's Lori and Russell, but they have the same like grade level in their position. But, Russell's like a little above her in that he's like my number two. She's probably number three, right? So she backfilled my old position, and she's managing our operations team. And so we had a really good groove, and we had an understanding with the guys, we call them the three-headed dragon, who were the two owners and the COO. And we would get super frustrated with them doing things around us, especially, the CEO who's gone now. So he kind of keeps inserting himself in places, and it's really irritating him. So I think we talked last time about there's an issue of respect, right? So on one hand, they respect my position, though we're still working on my elevation in their eyes in that position. I'm still a little like they'll come to me for things they really don't need to come to me for. So things they used to come to me. Yeah, it's just, anyway, that's getting worked out. With Russell, I really think there is very little respect for his position. And he can come across as really abrasive because he's heavy with the stick. And I keep telling him, less stick, more carrot. you gotta think about that. Less stick, more carrot. And so he got into it with one of our operations managers. So Chris, his name is Chris, felt like Russell was sort of stepping on his toes a little bit. So a few things happened. One of which was like at 7:00 at night, he sent an email. Hey, I'm looking at the numbers in this branch. So-and-so is only going to close X this month. What's happening? And Chris the next day was like, why is he asking me this? He has no right to ask me this. He shouldn't be asking me this. And he didn't even tell me why. And then a couple of other things happened, right? So Tuesday, Chris goes into Russell's office and says, I didn't like the way you did this. I didn't like the way you did that. You're showing it in my offices without telling me you're going. You're doing this, you're doing that. And Russell came out fighting, like puffing up his chest, like I'm the boss. You don't see all the things I'm doing. I'm doing all these things. You don't see all these things. I will ask you whatever I want to ask you, right? And so here's the summary. I'm the boss, and you will do as I say. You're not the boss of me. I don't have to. That's like the clip notes, right? So I'm thrust Tuesday and Wednesday into this, like, got to mediate what's happening here. So first of all, I say to Chris, do you understand his position? Well, I'm not sure I do. Okay, well, here's his position. I see it as he has every right to ask you what's going on in an office financially because he's responsible for that. I said, now, you didn't like that it was at 7 p.m. and you wanted him to explain why. So we can work on the delivery, but you need to understand, right? And I said, and also I kind of get the sense that you're being a little bratty. And he goes, yeah, I am. I'm like, okay, you can admit it. So I'm like, let me work on the delivery, all that kind of stuff, but let the record show he can ask you this. So I go talk to Russell, and Russell's all, he's an entitled brat, and he's this, and he's that. And I'm like, hold up. First of all, I said, we just have to figure out how to work together. So I'm like, first of all, we're going to assume good intent.
Yeah.
And second of all, we're going to offer up a lot of grace and kindness here and figure out how to work together. So I said, if he is bothered by non-urgent emails in the evening, you can work around that by just clicking the button to deliver it the next morning. So if it's not urgent, or you can say, hey, this isn't urgent, look at it tomorrow. Whatever it is. He goes, well, if it's on my mind, I want to put it out there. I said, then send yourself an email, right? So I'm trying to help him, right, like through this. And then, he did something else, oh my gosh, yesterday. So then the receptionist in the office goes to him, asks for a raise, and he just starts barreling down the tracks, and he didn't loop in, Chris, and it's his office and whatever else. So it's a shitstorm. Yeah. It really is, between the two of them. And so I mediated it as best as I could, but I'm like, Russell is not understanding how to deal with people managers and how to go through them and not over them. Yeah. Right. And so I think he's so set on just getting stuff done and pushing things forward that he's struggling to see it. And I don't want to use a big stick with him either, right? But somehow I've got to get him to see they are the ops managers. And if you're going to succeed in this role, you've got to go through them, not around them. So I'm really struggling with that, because I'm like, he's so great in so many ways, but this is going to be a career killer if he doesn't knock it off. Yeah.
Okay. That very clear. I can envision the whole thing. So
I'm sure you've experienced something just like it, haven't you?
Similar. Yeah. Question. What do you think his motivation is in general, or what motivate, or maybe not in general or even specifically?
Yeah. He and I have talked about that a little bit, and I feel like he has something to prove. So his dad died last year, maybe a year and a half ago. And he always wanted to prove to his dad, like, he was heavily involved in the sale of the company. So he knew early on, because he had to provide all the financial stuff, right? And so he knew early on all about it, kept it like a vault, was really involved in it. And so he was, talking to his dad throughout the whole thing. So now he's sort of like, well, I'm going to finish what I started. And I'm going to do this for my dad and show him, he goes, I didn't have this position before he died, and I want to make him proud. So there's that. The other piece is he wants to make this big impression on the higher ups at First American that he's the guy that can get stuff done.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
To which I have to say, at what cost?
Yeah.
Right? Now, there are other things, like there's another integration he's been dragging his feet on, and I told him yesterday, get it done now. Like, why are you dragging your feet on this? Get it done now. So it's really interesting how he sees it. But yeah, I think he's motivated by just wanting to make the good impression, both for his, dad up in heaven and for the people who are watching.
Yeah.
But it's about more than doing, is what I told him yesterday.
What is he, how does he respond when you've asked him, about the interpersonal stuff, like, or, ask him about like being for the people that work for you, not being against them? Or I don't know if you've used that term, but like.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that term, because he sees himself as being for people. he just sees things very black and white, and we have to use a lot of shades of gray.
Mhm.
And so I think he's like, he takes what I say to heart, but then he just does it again.
Mm.
Right? So, and he's not fully reading emails. He's not fully paying attention to things. And then he tries to go do something and make it happen, but he hasn't like gathered, like we were on a call yesterday and we're talking about some step and repeat frame or whatever. And I knew that his team had brought him lunch and he had turned his camera off. So I think he stepped away for a minute. Well, while he had stepped away, I think we had made a decision that we didn't need what we needed. But this morning, he's like trying to get all these people involved to try to find this 8x8 banner holder thing. And I'm like, what are you doing? What is this for? And then somebody else emails me. I'm like, time out, time out, time out. Like, is this for what I think it is? Yes, it is. Okay, everybody stop because it's already handled. So, I'm trying to be kind and say, I think you may have stepped away during this part of the conversation on the call. But it's, and someone else, it's like she asks about paperwork for her team and he doesn't read the whole thing. So he's moving too fast,
Okay.
right? He's got to stop and be more thoughtful. I don't know how to make him do that because he seems to be like a train running down the tracks, like his life depends on it.
Yeah. And do you think that the interaction with Chris is largely due to that behavior and just going too hard and fast?
I think he's going too hard and fast, and I think he has a chip on his shoulder about Chris, and Chris has a chip on his shoulder about him.
Okay.
I think it's the good old fashioned pissing contest.
Yeah. So there's
really
probably, I feel like I hear you saying there's kind of two issues. There's interpersonal skills, but then there's also just work skills. Like, how do you work?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's two different things.
Okay. Yeah. So, I know you said you don't want to come in with a big stick, and I agree with that. Do you do, how do you guys do performance reviews? Are they annual?
Yeah, we just did it yesterday.
Okay.
We did. We just did his Performance Connect yesterday. And so he and I had in the morning had this conversation about how to deal with these people, right? And then we did his Performance Connect. And so the way we do it is he fills out like a sheet about his accomplishments and all these different things. And I said, I also need you to be less stick, more carrot, and to be more thoughtful about how you're working with the escrow operations team. I said, that's something that you've got to really, I said, before you dive in, you need to stop and ask yourself, is this mine to do, or should I be going through someone else to get it done? Because I know you just want to get it done. The funny thing is I can totally relate because I'm a person who just wants to get it done.
Yeah.
But I've had to learn a different way of doing things. And he's not wrong. He is not wrong on some things. Like, does Chris need more accountability? And should Chris make such a big deal out of some of these things? Yeah, he's right on some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you, is there a way to ask him to come back to you with like, hey, what, do you have a few, how are you going to do this? What's your plan?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, he could probably stand some executive coaching.
Well, so he is going to have coaching with the consultant that we've hired. So 100%. And she'll get feedback on him from a number of people, I'm sure. And I have to coach Chris through, like, when Chris says, well, why didn't you tell me you were going to my office? And I was like, well, what you could have said, Chris, is he's our chief administrative officer and he was bringing you coffee. And isn't that great that he stopped by?
Yeah.
Like, right? Instead, Chris goes, why did you stop by in my office? Right. And so he's puffing up too.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It's so fun to kind of watch from the outside, even if it's
Yeah.
annoying. It's just right to kind of see the human behavior.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is a good idea, and he will benefit from some coaching
Mhm.
that I get to speak into, right? Because I
Oh,
get to
yeah.
tell
But I
them.
think in the meantime, asking him, like, so we talked about some real important things, like what is your plan? Like, or
Yeah,
do you want to talk about a plan? Would you like some help with that? Um,
yeah.
I'm stepping out of coaching again for just a minute, but I remember working with a team of mostly men once, and this prove yourself thing it's completely different than females. I mean, females have that too, but it's different. Um, and one thing that seemed to land was this concept of, bringing someone into a new leadership role and saying, okay, you've been appointed, but the goal is that at the end of 6 to 9 months, you would actually be elected. And so
Mm,
how
I like that.
how are you going to get there? And
Yeah,
men, well, I mean, maybe females, but and I don't even know where I got that. I probably read it somewhere, but it was like this particularly difficult black and white, just because someone who's been in that high operations, or just not operations like you're talking about, but like operating, just doing, and now they have to wait for other people. I mean, that's a big jump.
it is. Yep,
Have you
yep.
have you acknowledged that with him? Like, even just saying just that?
Yeah, yeah. We talked about that yesterday. I said, I know it's hard not to just go do it yourself,
Hmm.
but sometimes, like this person that wanted the raise, I said, I know you could make it happen. And I know what you were thinking in your brain. You were thinking, I just had this conversation with the HR person, and she said, we have people who are underpaid. And then you went, oh, that's a person who's underpaid. She just came to me. I can make that happen. So
Mhm.
instead, you want to help the branch manager and the regional manager have a win. We
Mhm.
want them to have a win with their people. So
Mhm.
yes, you can make it happen, but we get them to have the win with their person. He's like, yeah, yeah, I get that. So, some of those things, I'm like, yeah, it's a couple more steps, but it's the right way to do it.
Yeah. So we kind of, let me back up, make sure we, I, I heard you say that there are kind of two issues that are parallel. So one is just slowing down, right? So that he doesn't make mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, but the other is the people, the interaction, yeah, I would probably, I mean, how do you think he'd respond if you said, we just had our kind of evaluation touch point, you know, I'm recognizing we need to put some legs to this. And then that way I can help you versus
Yeah,
just do better.
yeah. I think that's a good idea. I have a one-on-one with him again tomorrow, so probably a good time I can
Mhm.
do that.
How do you think he'll respond?
I think he'll respond well to it. Um, I think he will struggle to put legs to it though. So I'll have to help him.
Right.
For all his talk about accountability with other people, he's accountable on a task. He's not as easily accountable to those kinds of relationship things.
Yeah. That's good insight. And I think it's fair to even offer that and just say, hey, I mean, this is new territory, right? For him, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And you've
Yep.
been finessing.
I've been
Well,
finessing people like this for 20 plus years. So yeah,
so what is intuitive to you is not to him.
it's not to him. And I think that's frustrating for me. It's like, you should get this
Yeah.
because I just innately get it. And I got it from day one just because it's who I am. Right. So I think as much as he is an unicorn of a finance guy because he can just talk to people, he's not afraid to talk to people. He just goes in and whatever, like he's very extroverted for a finance person, I'll tell you that. As much as he is, it's probably not in the ways that are most beneficial to our business. So, and that's kind of a clarifying statement for me, that he's really good, and I've leaned on him a lot for the relationships, because I'd rather just hunker down in my office and get stuff done, right? But I have to push myself out there. He's totally willing to just push himself out there. But then he's going to alienate some people in the process.
Yeah.
And we can't afford for him to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up a good point. Being intuitive and sensitive and reading the room is not the same as being extroverted and entertaining the room. I mean, those are really opposites. And yeah. I mean, one, the light's on him, one, the light's on the people. And that may also be a way for you to help him, you know, like, hey, we need to shine the light on the people, like what you're saying.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Which is, you do that intuitively with your, I mean, you're just born that way. So.
But he was not.
No. Okay. Well, I know we've covered a lot here. Let's take just a, are we getting somewhere with this with him?
Yeah, okay. That's helpful. I think it gives me some direction to kind of have a further conversation with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think we will meet again next week. And
yeah, do you want to stop recording and then we'll put it on the calendar?
Yeah. Yeah. How do I do that? Let's see. Okay.